tonight on TVN. Schedule shakeup. With the return to in-person learning, student clubs and organizations have been scrambling to meet consistently. How are club leaders pushing forward? Battling back. Now 8 months into the COVID-19 pandemic, local businesses are fighting to stay afloat. We'll hear from several owners on their experiences and a plea for unity. With the 2020 presidential election just days away, we'll talk to voters casting their ballots and master's students demanding reform. All this and more, next.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome into the Tower Broadcast Newsroom. I'm your host, Logan Schijano, and we're following the latest news. On October 4th, head of Upper School Peter Newcomb sent an email to the Upper School community detailing the new schedule and protocols for in-person learning. Informal gatherings were to be limited, which meant omitting clubs from the daily schedule and dividing lunch into 2 periods. We'll have more on both of those things later, but first, it's important to remember how we've gotten into the current situation we're in. The coronavirus pandemic came to the United States back in March, and almost 9 months later, we're still seeing new records in daily cases. This virus is by no means under control, and with Election Day nearing, voters are flocking to the polls in numbers we've never seen before. And while sometimes individual votes can get squashed into large data sets, the people behind the ballots matter. Just look here in Dobbs Ferry, where small businesses are in dire need of support but can't get enough because the federal government still hasn't reached a deal on a new stimulus package. These people are doing all they can to survive, but it's been extremely challenging, and that's where we start our coverage today.
I'm a mom of 4, so I'm homeschooling my children. So I have to, I have these 10-hour days, and a lot of times I'm not home until 8 o'clock at night.
That's Lisa DiMaria. Her and her husband, Raed Ayob, founded Salon Topaz 14 years ago. They said they've never worked harder than they are now.
Usually after 14 years, you tend to kind of let the business go into cruise control so that you could kind of relax and really enjoy your time with your family and everything. But lately, Lisa and I are working longer hours, longer days. We're here more than ever because we have to make sure that the business survives. This business, is our bread and butter and puts food on our table.
Salon Topaz reopened on June 9th, and while they're now doing cuts 7 days a week, there were tense moments along the way.
From a financial standpoint, we were hit hard. In the beginning, like my wife said, we didn't know what this was all about. So when they told us to close, we understood. My wife and I, we have 4 kids, and we wanted to make sure that we were safe so that we didn't bring anything back to our family, of course. But as time went by, and then you started hearing more stories, but then you saw the Home Depots, the Walmarts, the BJs jam-packed with people. Then you were like, wait a minute, what's going on? Why is this establishment open, and they're allowing all these people, and it's craziness. But my wife can be doing one-on-one services in the salon without anybody around. Why was that not safe? So then that's what I started getting frustrated and really upset and pissed off,
As the owner of Bar 3 Rivertowns, a workout studio in Dobbs, Becca Licht was forced to close her doors through late September. Nevertheless, she had a different mindset on the prolonged shutdowns.
If the governor felt like it wasn't safe for us to be back in there, and he's the one listening to more scientists than I have access to, the relatively significant restrictions that are placed on the operation of my business, are they hard to deal with? Yes. Are they also for the greater good and for public health? I think so.
As a new business that opened in May 2019, Licht had high hopes for Bar 3 in 2020.
Every month before the pandemic, I would set ambitious goals. And, as a sole entrepreneur, you end up with a lot of self-worth tied to whether or not you make those goals and whether or not you are continuing to grow your business to the extent that you expect and want to. So it has been really disappointing, frankly, to have to put those goals that I had for my business, to put the business plan that I had for the rest of 2020 and into 2021 off to the side.
Bar 3 used to run 30 classes a week. Now Licht and others have had to completely change their strategies.
In July, when it was clear that we weren't going to be able to reopen in studio, but we were able to gather in larger groups outside, we started hosting some socially distanced outdoor classes. We were permitted to reopen in studio at 33% of our original capacity as of September. Right now, we have 5 classes that are outdoors, 5 classes a week that are indoors, and 10 classes a week, more or less, that are on Zoom.
Turns out, innovative ideas are what kept businesses like Topaz and the Parlor down the street afloat during the early months.
My wife came up with this idea of doing color to-go kits. What we did is we formulated their color, and we set up a little table outside, and they would pay over the phone, and they would call us when they were coming, and we'd set up appointments, and we'd put the bag outside, and they would take the bag and do their color at home. That literally saved our business, where we were able to pay our rent and pay the electric, the phone bill, and stuff like that.
We did this sort of charitable concept that was called Dough for Dough, meaning that every pizza that we made, if you donated one, right, we would match that donation. So it was so much fun because every day we get phone calls from different hospitals or different people who are like, my husband works in the emergency room at St. John's, and I want to do 75 pizzas over there. So they donate 35 or whatever it is, and it was incredible.
Salon Topaz has set up 2 outdoor cutting stations, and the Parlor now has open-air seating and a tiki bar. Though new projects like these cost money, the businesses have used the community as motivation. Being essential and being open gave us the opportunity to actually do exactly what it was set out to do, and that was really not even just to do to go and kind of restructure and find a business, but more to provide for the community and do what we could, because that motivated us every day to come in and do what we do best, which was cook great food for people who want it or need it. Additionally, the Parlor, Salon Topaz, and Bar 3 received stimulus through the Paycheck Protection Program, but with the government's failure to negotiate a new stimulus bill, lack of leadership, and inability to contain the coronavirus, the owners don't know how long this new normal is sustainable.
It has helped, especially with payroll, but is it enough? No, absolutely not. For the 3 months that I was closed, not even close to what I would have made.
My ability to run my business safely is one thing, and that requires there to be a vaccine, and it requires there to be less community spread of the coronavirus. But a second and equally important thing is rebuilding the trust of any consumer or any client who wants to come through the door. And that I don't think is going to change until there's a significantly different attitude about running the pandemic, both federally and in New York.
Still, Dabari tries to remain optimistic.
It's tight as hell. We are in the shit right now. But with that being said, proper money management and again leading with your passion, right? Because I'll say, I always say to people, when you do what you love and you're passionate about it, money will come and business will come.
If you take a walk into Dobbs Ferry, you'll see that so many of the businesses have by no means been as fortunate as those who I spoke with today. And if we're looking more broadly across the United States, roughly 1 in 6 small businesses have been unable to reopen since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, these small business owners who I spoke with are well aware of this, which is why they continue to be so grateful for the customers who support them. I'm Logan Schijano, TBN, Dobbs Ferry. While the Parlor and other restaurants are serving customers, the Brock Dining Hall staff are back to prepping lunch for our community. But the menu is much, much different. Veterans in culinary management like Brock General Manager Lee Bergelson are used to crafting their menus weeks in advance, but the COVID-19 pandemic has put Bergelson and his staff under the gun, adapting to new circumstances and doing their best to satisfy the Masters community.
I would say we didn't really have that much more timing than probably you did, because there was a lot of stuff in the air about the protocols and safety and really who would be coming back and the numbers. So there were a lot of things that we really had to kind of do on the fly.
The food has included sandwiches, salads, and other prepackaged goods, but a welcome sight in recent weeks has been the return of Master's homemade cookies.
When we created the menu, we did really have to try to do a streamlined, modest menu, just so that we could be prepared for all possibilities of what would be thrown at us, with the idea being that we would be able to grow from that point.
Bergelson noted that while the options may be limited, the workload has actually increased.
Well, most people don't realize the fact that when we're in the dining room, a lot of that food is prepared in bulk. And whenever you're preparing in bulk, it's a lot cheaper, easier, to do and to serve. Whenever you're dealing with individual items like a wrapped sandwich or a salad, that's more tedious, it's more involved, it's more labor intensive. And so with that being said, it takes more time.
Bergelson's team has also encountered several logistical obstacles, including the fact that lunch is now served in 4 locations, 2 for the upper school and 2 for the middle school.
When you're trying to have people move through a line safely, efficiently, quickly, and you have to hold food in a location that maybe isn't designed to be serving and holding food, those all need to be taken into consideration, when you're building a menu.
And although the lack of variety has generated mixed reviews and some students are now bringing their own lunch, most are understanding of the challenges involved.
I had to bring my own lunch. If I'm being honest, it's not the best, but I mean, they're trying to provide for a lot of people, so you have to be considerate.
I'm not a huge fan of the food, but we're handling it the best we could, so it's not really right for us to ask for more. So I think the way we're doing it is perfectly fine. We may not like it, but we're getting used to it, so it's perfectly fine.
Now that the dining hall team has had a few weeks to evaluate the production process and have a better idea of the volume of food they must provide, hot food has been added to lunch. Here's what Bergelson told me a few weeks ago.
We're going to be adding actually hot sandwiches and soup into the mix. So definitely some things that would be appreciated, certainly going into colder days and months ahead of us, and giving the options for hot sandwiches gives people obviously some comfort that they're not having a cold sandwich every day.
From a non-food standpoint, spaces like the FC gym and the quad have been outfitted to keep students distance while eating. In the dining hall, plexiglass dividers have also been installed. The new lunch has been divided into 2 40-minute periods to mitigate crowds, and a student lunch period can differ from day to day depending on their schedule. This lack of consistency, among other issues, has troubled students.
Just the problem is sometimes I don't want to eat my lunch at 11:25 in the morning because normally I wake up really late and eat breakfast at that time on the weekend, so I'm somewhat confused.
The circles are they're kind of hard to talk to people, but I mean, it's the only way you could really talk to people with COVID, I guess.
I don't like how there's 2 lunches because usually during lunch, that's the time when you can really see your friends that you don't have classes with. And then if you don't see those people that you don't have classes with, you don't see them the whole day. The environment feels different in a way because it's you feel disconnected. And usually in lunch, you're always with your classmates and you're having fun and just you feel more together. But I don't like how it's more separated.
Logan Schijano, TBN, the Master's School. And usually lunch is a great time where students can gather with their clubs, but because of the new schedule, those meetings are having to occur on an ad hoc basis at all hours of the day. 5 p.m. or 5 a.m., with students scattered across the world in a schedule that now pays little time for student-run clubs and organizations, student leaders have had to get creative with planning their club meetings.
Since there's no time during the day to meet, it's been kind of difficult, especially because I want to include all members of the community. And so the only time that makes sense to me, during the day would be after everybody's gotten home, or at least everybody in New York, so 5 p.m. But then that's 5 in the morning for people who are in China. So it's been kind of difficult trying to sort that out. And I feel bad because I want to make sure everybody's able to attend my meetings.
Senior Anastasia Gorobets, who lives in Ukraine, is co-president of several clubs which now meet after school, or for her, the middle of the night.
I would love to go to sleep at 11 p.m., but I guess I have to stay up until 1, but it's fine. We took a utilitarian approach in finding what works best for everyone.
Gorobets is co-president of EFFECT, Master's Sustainability Initiative, which is met regularly to start the year. However, she said it's been harder to get her other clubs off the ground.
We're not meeting as much as we would normally because the participation is really down, not in EFFECT, for example, but in Panache, we haven't been getting a lot of submissions, but last year we were literally overwhelmed. We got so many submissions of art, of poetry, of writing in general, and now we haven't even had our first meeting.
Senior Stellar Sun, who's co-president of Muse and Code, both dance performance groups at Masters, noted that aside from scheduling, students' motivation has decreased dramatically in the virtual setting.
Some of our dancers are having like Zoom fatigue. We all get like these energies like as we're like dancing together in this like one big dance studio. And then even though like we're tired after like sports or like after school activities, like when we all meet in this like one area and then dance together, we laugh together, and that's like how we get energy. But I think since like we're like watching the screen, like looking at the screen, it's kind of like difficult. But I'm hoping that we can manage that and then like overcome difficulties for both Muse and Code.
Still, club leaders like Model UN co-president Zach Battleman are pushing forward.
We've been doing a lot more like simulations within the club to practice for conferences. Since conferences are remote and they're a lot cheaper this year, we're doing more.
MUN recently hosted guest speaker Tom Countryman, who served as Assistant Secretary of State of International Security in the Obama administration.
He talked a lot about, like policy that he helped enact. And I think that it gave people, especially those in the club that are interested in going into foreign policy, like some of our members are, it gave them a really clear idea of like what they wanted to do and how they could go about it.
New upper school math teacher Stella Carey is running a baking club as a co-curricular this fall. Though the return to in-person learning has prevented her from doing the classes live, she's still been able to mix it up.
So I made a video, and then the people in the club were able to watch the video whenever they wanted and do the baking on their own. And so I did that twice. So we did banana bread, and then we did s'mores brownies.
In International Club, Sun is looking for new ways to introduce foreign students to the Masters community in light of the postponement of the annual morning meeting flag ceremony.
We started to have this like Google form sending out to all the international clubs saying, hey, like if you have any story that you want to share, it doesn't have to be like just about the cultural experiences. It can be anything, your like academic life. Please like submit like with photos or like videos if you want. And then hopefully like sharing these stories will like make students in like other side of the country or other side of the world aware about, oh, this student goes to my school and then like she or he's from this country.
And while scheduling complications continue to remain a challenge for all clubs, Gora Betts had a suggestion.
Maybe club meetings could be in the time we have morning meeting and advisory now. Like that could be like, an hour sort of, where you have like 30 minutes morning meeting and then 30 minutes clubs, or 30 minutes advisory and then 30 minutes clubs, like something like that.
Carrie hopes that clubs can find their way back into the school day as she sees them as an integral part of the student experience.
Being part of a school baking club is different than, say, just getting together with your friends and making cookies, right? There's it's part of the school community, and it's meeting other people that you might not interact with otherwise.
Logan Schijano, TBN, the Masters School. Now, last week a survey was sent by upper school head Peter Newcomb, and it was asking for community members to give feedback on the return to in-person learning and remote continuation. Now, I caught up with Newcomb and Dean of Students Jeff Carnevale to get their opinions on the first few weeks of in-person and press them on possible changes we could see in the near future. Thank you both so much for joining me today. I'm glad we could find time to get together. I really appreciate it. I know I'm assuming you both are so happy that we have students finally back in school after it's been almost 6-7 months since we've seen people on campus. Surely, these last 7 months have been challenging in so many different ways. Now we're starting to see some semblance of normalcy with students back on campus who are able to come. But I'm curious to know from both of you, what's been the most surprising thing that you've had to deal with, or most challenging thing that you've had to deal with of late in the last couple of months, leading up to the return to school?
I would say that one of the biggest challenges has been trying to find ways, as best we can in the midst of all of this, to provide some opportunity for masters to be masters. And so looking at the schedule, looking at events after school, it's been really challenging, but that's been, I think, one of the hardest things, is to how can we come back together with many of us and even some further afield and still have the strong community that makes Masters such a special place.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think the creating the equity of experience for people in various different situations to feel like they can access everything that is Masters.
Do you have a message just, across the board for everyone who is dealing with their own, individual circumstances, whether that be, being a boarder or, being at home with a tough situation right now? What would you both say to students right now?
We're a community that's here for each other, and so, whether you're on the other side of the world in China or whether you're remote from nearby, we are still a community that cares for one another and is here to support each other, and to be as much a part of that community no matter where you are in the world as you can possibly be.
I know that the school has worked really hard, especially for the students who are able to come back now, to devise a plan that is going to, maximize the safety of, everything and keep students and faculty and teachers safe to the best of our abilities. What has been, Mr. Carnevale, because I know, what has been your reaction on how the precaution and safety protocols, what's been your thoughts on how those have played out and how students and everyone has done abiding to them?
I think it's been a real testament to the spirit of Masters in our community. I've seen students, faculty, everyone really adhere to our community expectations, and I think that really comes from a place of caring for each other and caring for the people who are in our lives and wanting to be here. And so we all go into this knowing we have to do our part to take care of one another, and I think that's a part of who we are as a school, and I think it's played out in these few weeks that we've been back.
There have been a couple of unfortunate situations where we've had to ask students to leave campus for a certain period of time because they haven't had their masks on. But I think by and large, and even in those instances, people are really dedicated to protecting each other.
Have there been any issues or concerns or things that you've noticed that you think need refining or improvements from, the protocols themselves or the students and everyone following them?
I think we've been really thoughtful in putting in place protocols that are both conscious of the health and safety of the community and also ones that are attainable. And we've seen things be really successful, from the mask wearing to social distancing and the dining hall. It's gone really very smoothly.
And I don't want to be, too critical of anything we put in place because it has only been a couple of weeks, so we're still trying to, see how things are working. But personally, I feel that sometimes there's things that are, very strict, like, okay, if you're in your circle, and you're eating, that's when you take your mask off. Other than that, put it on. But then other times, or like, for example, no using the locker rooms, like. Mm-hmm. But then other times, the hallways are still crowded. Sometimes the dining hall gets crowded. I guess, do you feel that there's sometimes a double standard on how things have worked out?
No, I don't. I mean, I think our primary motivating factor when we were approaching this, as Ms. Danforth said, was health and safety. And so working in concert with our health advisory team, there are places on campus that when we talk about having like attainable, realistic expectations, we're never going to have 6 feet of distance in the hallways. There are going to be times where students are, closer together than 6 feet, but there's a lot of thought that's gone into like moving kids along in one-way hallways. So you're projecting forward. We're not talking face to face. Every school administrator that I've spoken with has said that that's been the biggest challenge for them, is navigating sort of the informal time. And I already feel like we, what I've heard from many students and some faculty too is it's like such a structured day, right? And I think if we get to a point where we're like mandating 6 feet and an enforcement to the T, like that's going to feel really terrible from a student and faculty experience. So the formal time where it's longer than the suggested time from our health advisory team, we're comfortable with kids moving as long as they're moving through the hallway and campus in a way that isn't really maliciously doing this, right? We gravitate towards one another by human nature. And so faculty and staff are going to continue to say like, hey, it's great seeing you guys. Can you just take a couple steps back? But where there's a more formal approach, it's going to be easier to ask all of us to participate and contribute.
And I know you mentioned that one of the things you said that the schedule is definitely more strict now in terms of, trying to minimize, I guess, those informal times, because that's kind of when things can't be upheld as closely. One of those informal times is clubs and meeting with, students and doing things that, things we all share, passions we enjoy. Are there any plans to reconsider, when clubs can meet either during the school day or at least in person at some point, maybe after school?
I think we designed the schedule for the first time, right, in a space where we needed to have a lived experience of what that's like. And I think now as we continue to move through it and experience how our days flow, we'll be able to look at, where can we continue to improve upon it. Where can we bring aspects that are not represented in the schedule, like clubs? How can we incorporate that into the fabric of Masters? And that's going to be an ongoing exploration.
Yeah, I think clubs has probably been the biggest casualty of the schedule, and it's been one that, as we were creating the schedule, we knew was going to be a part that we had to take out in order to accommodate a lot of the other pieces to fit in. And part of it too is we want to make sure that we're maximizing the experience for all. And so trying to find ways, I would venture to say that's going to be a large part of the survey feedback, is going to be finding those informal times, whether that be clubs, whether that be extra help. I would imagine that that's going to be front and center in some respects for some kids' experience.
Something that students are talking about is, are we going to close down between Thanksgiving and December, because a lot of people are maybe traveling for Thanksgiving or for winter break. Have those things been in consideration?
Absolutely, yeah. These are all pieces that we've been thinking about for longer than I'd like to admit, but so there are a number of schools doing different pieces. Some colleges are shutting down from Thanksgiving to middle of February. Some boarding schools are doing that as well, to have sort of the one out, one in process, and they're getting rid of spring breaks in order to do that. Some of our peer schools locally have taken different approaches. Ms. Danforth will be releasing her plan, I believe, in the next couple of days, so I don't want to speak to that.
Thank you both so much again. I really appreciate your answers, and glad that we were able to come together and have these discussions today.
Yeah, thank you, Logan. It's really appreciate you sharing all this information with the school.
Early voting has started here in New York on October 24th, and even on that very first day, the wait time was over 5 hours in some places. Here in Dobbs Ferry, it wasn't quite that long, but people were still determined to get to the polls on day one, and they all had very important reasons to do so. We're out here covering early voting for the 2020 election, and we've had the chance to talk to several people on the important issues and why they're out here voting in person amid a global pandemic. Take a look. So I know that there's a lot of different issues that are important to different people. To you, as we move into this election, what are some of the things that you're most looking towards and you want to see with the candidate that you're putting your faith in for the next 4 years?
I always wanted to put forth of having American first and having the people first and knowing keep the growth of the people. I want to get back to safety. I want to help bring back the schools, bring back the businesses. We want everyone to know that as the leader of the country, know that we elect somebody that want to bring forth together for the people.
Well, the most important thing is to get rid of Trump and to unify the country. And second most important to me is a woman's right to choose.
I think we really need to address, we really need to start taking climate change seriously. I think we need to really head on address the systemic racism in our country. I think we need to work on the economy and start supporting, not just the top 1% of people. We need to change our tax system.
I feel like this is an incredibly important election, probably the most important election of my lifetime.
You know, a lot of people are saying that even, the two top candidates who are running in this election are saying that. Why, to you personally, is it the most important election of your lifetime?
Because I feel that the state of our country right now is crumbling, and I hope for change.
What change specifically?
I hope that hate can be eliminated from the current climate. I feel that there's a lot of hatred being perpetuated by our current leadership.
I know that there's been a lot of talk about the Supreme Court and Justice Barrett probably going to be sworn in before the election. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think it is a terrible mistake. It's obviously political, and it politicizes the court in a way that is really unconscionable. So I hope that when Biden wins, that we are able to pack the court.
Okay, so you support packing the court?
Absolutely.
Why? And, it's never been attempted in, I think, 100 years. Do you think it might be seen as unconstitutional by some people?
I think the push to get Amy Coney Barrett nominated and approved into the court is actually unconstitutional. So I think there's no other way to fight it, and to ensure that that the court is at least a potentially fair body.
I know that it's this summer, a lot of the things that were, very important students for our schools, everyone across the country, was a lot of the racial unrest. Do you have any thoughts on that and how the current administration has done handling those issues?
Well, I think it's very tough. It's I pray and I wanted to look forward to bringing the United States people together. This is one beauty of this country, is the diversity of this country, and knowing that we as Americans, we love to each other, whether as an African American, people who are Native Americans and stuff, people, Latinos. Let people know that we're here for each other.
Now, you can see that most people we've talked to have been in strong support of Joe Biden. As they've told me, we tried to approach someone wearing a Make America Great Again hat and shirt, and he told me that he would absolutely not want to be interviewed, and actually he also wasn't wearing a mask. So we've been trying to cover both sides of the story, but it has been rather difficult here in Dobbs Ferry. Now, when it comes to our community, 161 out of 171 respondents to our Tower election survey said that they were supporting Joe Biden. But if you look here at the chart, you'll see that out of those 161 people, 129 of them said that they were settling for Biden, while just about 30 or so said they wholeheartedly supported him. We also polled the community on important issues and tried to get a sense of which ones were most important as we look to elect someone for the next 4 years to serve our country. Now you can see that climate change led the way, followed by containing the coronavirus pandemic and fighting for social justice. Joining me now to talk more about the 2020 race are freshman Chloe Bash and Bianca Brigitta and junior Anna Drattel. Now, you've all mentioned that you are supporting Joe Biden in this election, and actually roughly 90% of students and faculty at Masters who filled out our Tower election survey said the same. So, one of the questions we asked in the survey was, what's the most important issue to you in this election? So I know that can be a difficult question to answer because there are a lot of things, especially now, that are important to all of us. But if you had to choose one, tell me a little bit about what you would choose and why you believe that the candidate you support is best to tackle that issue in the next 4 years.
It's kind of hard to rank level of importance, between all of the issues that are going on right now. However, my priority would be coronavirus, because what Trump is saying is we need to open things and we need to save and salvage the economy. And Biden's saying we need to close things down, wear masks. But I guess one of the reasons I support Biden is because he supports maintaining and controlling the virus. I also think that it's absolutely dumbfounding how Trump had a handbook and he had instructions on what to do to handle the virus when it came all the way back in February. And he didn't follow it. Instead, he said, don't worry, it's not a big deal. And even after he got the virus, after accepting the most advanced medical care probably in the entire US, he's saying to his supporters, oh, it's not a big deal. And his supporters, from what I've seen, are very easy to sway by Trump. So when he says that it's not a big deal, they're the ones receiving his healthcare plan. They're not the ones receiving the top medical care at the presidential hospital.
Yeah, and just adding on what we've all been hearing is how he might want to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and that's not the fact that he might actually want to do that. That's not the only thing that concerns me. What really concerns me is that he says it's like it's one thing to get rid of something but replace it with something better, but he says he's going to do that, but he hasn't really explained a clear plan for that, and that's kind of where I get concerned.
To add on to what Anna just said, I'm also like very concerned with like the way he talks about the deaths from COVID-19 that happened in America. When he like says like statistics or numbers, he like says it in a way that kind of like dismisses all the people who have like struggled with the virus, and like he's saying that he has it all under control, but like it really like he doesn't really have a plan, just like Anna said.
So President Trump says that he's done more for the African American community than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. And I know that if you caught the debate a few days ago, you probably heard that he also said that he was the least racist person in the entire world. Now, Trump there are some things that he has done for the African American community. He's, provided funding for Black colleges. He's done some things. He signed the First Step Act back in 2018, and African Americans did have a record low unemployment prior to this pandemic. But I'm curious to know, what do you all make of those comments?
Well, I feel like that's a common argument, like that most people who support Trump make. Like, they also make arguments about the Black crime rate, which is invalid because Black communities are over-policed. And the point of the BLM movement isn't Black on Black crime, it's racistly inflicted crime or police brutality. But there have been videos and quotes of Trump saying that Black people are thugs, of Trump basically denouncing the name of people of color. And he's using his statistics, such as creating more jobs for Black people, to back that up. However, calling himself the least racist person in the world and blatantly throwing terms around such as thugs, it should be enough, I guess. I don't know.
So let's talk a little bit about, I'm really glad all three of you are here. And when I was approaching, I asked many different people if they'd be interested in doing this interview. And, I tried to get people on both sides, and that was difficult because I don't think anyone actually who filled out the Tower election survey, who said they were supporting Trump, indicated that they would be interested in being interviewed. So I did try, to have varying perspectives on here, but it was really difficult for me to do that. Do you see that, our school and New York in general, we all know they're known to be liberal, but does it concern you that, these people who may have opposing viewpoints aren't feeling comfortable to speak out on them?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely that's a really big thing. I've mentioned when I talk about this with my friends and stuff. I feel like regardless of one's point of view or what political party they align themselves with, my philosophy on that is you do not have to like their opinion at all. If it's racist and homophobic and sexist and things like that, that's a whole other level, and we're just not going to tolerate that here. But I feel like we need to find a way to really think about the future and how all of this hate and all this violence is really going to do so much more damage. And again, their opinions might be completely wrong or racist, and I totally understand that. I just feel like related to, I guess, less severe issues, like we've been saying in my advisory class and stuff, or like economics, things like that. I feel like if we're afraid, even if the Republican side is afraid to share their views on just more simpler things like economics, not like racism, sexism, stuff like that, I feel like that's also cause for concern, because I'm not saying we're all to blame at all, but I feel like we can all improve in that respect, where right away, like I've seen a lot of my friends, I have some friends who they say they're Republican, and they say they're very afraid to say that because people call them right away. People are like, oh, you're sexist, you're homophobic, you're racist. And they're actually great people. And some of them don't like Trump at all. They're very disgusted by some of his behaviors, you know?
Joe Biden, actually, a lot of people, he said in the debate that he wanted to be America's president. And, a lot of people point to his empathetic nature and also how he could be a unifying figure in American politics if he is to be elected. Now, that being said, there are concerns that have been raised, by Trump, by others about Joe Biden, whether that be his age. He would be the oldest president if he were to be elected. He has been involved in politics for over 40 years. And, Trump would say that he hasn't gotten done the things that he's pledged to get done if he were to be elected. He hasn't gotten those things done. So why does he deserve another chance? Other people would say that he's not known to be as tough on crime or on violence as Trump. Trump likes to preach that he is a president of law and order. We all know that. Do you guys share these concerns about former Vice President Biden? And if so, why are you still supporting them, I guess, him?
The thing with Trump is that his slogan is "Make America Great Again," and he's been president for 4 years, and clearly he hasn't really done that. I also believe that Trump is beneficial to the red states, but as a woman in a blue state who is liberal and democratic, I think that it would be I think that Biden is going to be supporting both red and blue states, whereas Trump has proven to favor, or even if Biden might favor blue states because he is democratic, as he said in the debate, Trump is going to support Republican states, and blue states are just going to be fighting and rebelling as they have been for the past few months.
We feel like with Trump, you kind of know what you're getting in the sense that he is very blunt, very not transparent, but he's very blunt and right to the point. He does not mess around. He says what he feels, doesn't think twice about it. And a concern that some people have is that with Biden, that he might be hiding stuff or lying about stuff, which may very well be true. But the thing that I think of is, like, do the ends really justify the means? I mean, if as a woman, I don't feel safer if I wanted to go to a university in the South, maybe they want to repeal Roe v. Wade or any other laws like that. If we feel so afraid, I feel like that's just cause for concern. Like, we're never all going to agree. Obviously, we're always going to be divided, but it feels like now we're not just divided politically and statistically, we're divided morally, if that makes sense.
Well, Chloe, Anna, and Bianca, thank you all so much for joining me today. Your insights were really appreciated and really valuable. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Tower Broadcast News. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, remember to follow Tower on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our new YouTube channel, Tower Broadcast News. For all of us here at TBN, I'm Logan Schijano. Have a great night.